The heat inside the Apex Logistics warehouse didn't just arrive. It occupied the space like an invading army. By 10:00 a.m., the thermometer mounted near the loading dock for the cool side of the building read 94 degrees Fahrenheit. By noon, it hit 98. With the humidity rolling off the nearby river, the heat index was a suffocating 106. I am Elias Thorne, the Senior Inventory Logistics Manager. I've been with Apex for 12 years. I know how the building breathes, or in this case, how it was choking. The HVAC system had died on a Friday. On Monday, I'd filed the first maintenance ticket. By Wednesday, the air was stagnant, smelling of cardboard dust and industrial sweat. My team, 24 floor workers, were moving in slow motion. I could see the glazed look in their eyes. This wasn't just discomfort, it was a liability. I walked up to the mezzanine, where the administrative offices sat like a glass-walled fortress. The transition from the warehouse floor to the hallway was like stepping into a refrigerator. I felt the sweat on my neck turn to ice. Vane, the regional director, was behind his mahogany desk. He didn't look up when I entered. He was adjusted his tie, looking at a spreadsheet on a curved monitor. He looked crisp, not a single bead of sweat on his brow. "Marcus," I said, my voice neutral. I'd practiced the gray rock tone all morning. No anger, no pleading, just data. The floor temperature just crossed 98 degrees. Based on the current heat index, we are in the danger zone of the National Weather Service's heat chart.
Vane finally looked up. He had the smile of a man who owned a yacht he couldn't afford. "Elias, always with the charts, it's summer. Warehouses get hot, it's the nature of the beast," he said.
"It's a broken beast," I replied. "The main chiller is down. The technician's quote is on your desk. It's an $8,000 fix. If we don't do it, we're going to have a medical emergency on the floor."
Vane leaned back, crossing his arms. "The budget for Q3 is locked, Elias. We've had some unforeseen expenditures in the regional marketing department. Repairs of this magnitude require corporate approval, and frankly, I'm not going to be the guy who asks for more money while the stock price is dipping. Tell the boys to take extra water breaks. Buy some Gatorade on the company card. Just keep it under $50.
Extra water breaks won't lower the core body temperature of a man shifting 40-pound crates for 8 hours, I said.
"Is that a medical opinion, Elias? Because last I checked, you were an inventory guy." Vane's smile sharpened. "The AC stays off. We'll look into it in September when the rates drop. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a conference call."
I didn't argue. I didn't slam the door. I simply nodded once and walked out. As I stepped back into the 98-degree blast of the warehouse floor, I pulled my phone from my pocket. I didn't call a repairman. I opened a new encrypted spreadsheet on my personal cloud drive. I titled it, Log of Negligence Apex Logistics, Site 42. Entry 1, 13:15 p.m. Temperature 98.4 degrees F. Humidity 72%. Request for HVAC repair denied by Marcus Vane. Reason cited, budgetary constraints. Note, Vane's office thermostat currently set to 68 degrees F. I walked over to Dock 4 and spoke to my lead hand. "Tell everyone to slow down. If you feel dizzy, you sit. No questions, and save every single water bottle receipt." The heat wave wasn't going anywhere. According to the 5-day forecast, the real feel was expected to hit 112 by Friday. Marcus Vane thought he was saving his bonus by ignoring the heat. He didn't realize he was just fueling the fire that would eventually consume his career. Friday morning arrived with a sky the color of tarnished brass. By 8:00 a.m., the warehouse was already a furnace. I had spent the night before reading the OSHA General Duty Clause, Section 5(a)(1). It's a beautiful piece of legalese. It states that an employer must furnish a place of employment which is free from recognized hazards that are causing or are likely to cause death or serious physical harm. A heat index of 110 is a recognized hazard. Marcus Vane's refusal to fix the chiller was the catalyst. I walked the floor with a handheld digital psychrometer I'd bought with my own money. I wasn't just checking the temperature anymore. I was recording the wet bulb globe temperature, the gold standard for heat stress monitoring. I saw Leo near the conveyor belt. Leo was 20. He was a summer intern, a bright kid trying to save up for his junior year of college. He was usually fast, but today his movements were jerky, uncoordinated. His shirt was soaked through, but he wasn't sweating anymore. That's the red flag. When the sweating stops, the organs start to simmer. Leo, go to the break room, I commanded. Now.
"I'm fine, Mr. Thorne," he mumbled. His voice sounded thick, like he had a mouth full of cotton. "Mr. Vane walked through earlier. He told us if we didn't hit the noon quota, we'd lose our weekend overtime. I need that money."
Vane had come down to the floor in his $800 loafers just to threaten the laborers into working faster in a death trap. That was the hubris coefficient hitting its peak. The quota doesn't matter if you're in the ICU, Leo. Move, I said. Before he could take a step, Leo's knees buckled. It wasn't a graceful fall. He hit the concrete floor hard, his head narrowly missing the edge of a steel pallet. "Medical, now!" I roared. The floor erupted into controlled chaos. Two of my veteran loaders who were trained in first aid rushed over. They rolled Leo onto his side. His skin was hot to the touch, scary hot. I didn't call Marcus Vane. I called 911. 5 minutes later, the sirens were wailing outside the loading bays. That was when Vane finally appeared on the mezzanine, looking down like a confused Roman emperor. He rushed down the stairs, his face flushed, not from the heat but from panic.
"Elias, what is this?" Vane hissed, pulling me aside as the paramedics loaded Leo onto a gurney. "Why are there sirens? This should have been handled internally. Our workmen's comp premiums are going to skyrocket."
"He has heat stroke, Marcus," I said, my voice as flat as a dial tone. "His internal temperature is likely over 104. That's a life-threatening emergency."
"You should have called me first," Vane snapped. He looked at the paramedics, then at the other workers who had stopped to watch. "Everyone, back to work. It was just a fainting spell. Elias, get them moving. We have a quota."
"The paramedics are declaring this a hazardous environment," I lied. I knew they wouldn't, not officially, but I wanted to see his reaction.
"They don't have that authority," Vane shouted. "I have a business to run. If you don't get this floor moving in 5 minutes, I'll find a manager who can."
I looked at him, truly looked at him. He wasn't seeing a dying kid. He was seeing a line on a graph. "I have noted your directive, Marcus," I said. I pulled out my phone and tapped the voice memo app that had been running in my pocket the entire time. "Just to be clear, you are ordering the staff to continue heavy manual labor in 100-plus-degree heat, immediately following a life-threatening heat stroke incident on the floor because of workmen's comp premiums and quotas."
Vane froze. He saw the phone. His eyes narrowed. "You're done, Thorne. You think you're a hero. You're a snitch. Consider yourself on administrative leave, effective immediately. Give me your badge."
"Gladly," I said. I handed it over. I didn't need the badge to do what I was about to do next. I walked out of the warehouse into the blazing sun and straight to my car. Entry 14 in the log, 12:45 p.m. Employee Leo collapsed. Heatstroke suspected. 911 called. Marcus Vane attempted to prevent medical intervention and ordered immediate return to work under threat of termination. Audio recorded. It was time to stop being an employee and start being a witness. They say that when you close a door, a window opens. When Marcus Vane took my badge, he forgot one crucial detail. I had spent 12 years building the inventory architecture of Site 42. I didn't need a physical badge to access the ERP system. I had set up the remote access protocols for emergency inventory audits years ago, and my credentials were tied to a legacy administrative account that HR hadn't audited in half a decade. I sat in my home office, the AC humming at a cool 72 degrees. On my left monitor was the news. Channel 5 was already reporting on the industrial accident at the Apex warehouse. On my right monitor was the belly of the beast, the financial ledgers of Site 42. If Marcus Vane said there was no budget for a chiller, the money had to be somewhere. I started with the maintenance and repairs budget. Every month, Site 42 was allocated $15,000 for general upkeep. Over the last 6 months, that fund should have had plenty of padding for an $8,000 chiller repair. I ran a query for all payments made out of the M&R account since January. The results were interesting. Every month, exactly $12,500 was paid out to a company called Vanguard Property Maintenance. I'd never seen a Vanguard truck at the warehouse. We used local contractors for plumbing, electrical, and HVAC. Vanguard wasn't on our approved vendor list for the floor, yet they were receiving the lion's share of the budget. I pulled the invoices. They were masterpieces of vagueness. Consultative oversight of structural facilities. Preventative diagnostic evaluation. I went to the Secretary of State's website and looked up the business registration for Vanguard Property Maintenance, LLC. The registered agent was a man named Arthur Vane. Marcus Vane's father? Or perhaps a brother? I dug deeper. The mailing address for Vanguard was a P.O. box in a town 2 hours away, the same town where Marcus Vane owned a summer cottage he liked to brag about. This wasn't just a budget issue. This was a kickback scheme. Marcus was funneling the maintenance budget into a shell company owned by a family member, then likely using that money to pay for his personal lifestyle. The reason he wouldn't fix the AC wasn't because there was no money. It was because fixing the AC would require him to stop stealing from the pot. "I found the rotten root, Marcus," I whispered to the empty room. But a kickback scheme is a slow burn. I needed something faster to protect the people still in that warehouse. I needed the health department. I spent the next 3 hours compiling the evidence package. 1, the temperature logs. 2, the denied maintenance tickets. 3, the photo of the non-functioning chiller unit with the broken tag from 6 months ago. 4, the audio recording of Vane ordering the team back to work while the ambulance was still in the parking lot. I opened a burner email account using a VPN. I drafted 2 emails. The first was to the Department of Health and OSHA. I attached the evidence package and labeled it Urgent, Life Safety Violation and Imminent Danger Apex Logistics Site 42. The second was to the Channel 5 News tip line. If you want to know why that intern collapsed today, look into Vanguard Property Maintenance and why the AC has been broken for 6 months. I hit send on both. The trident was now in the air. Professional front, OSHA, social front, Channel 5 News, financial front, the Vanguard kickback scheme which I was saving for the killing blow. My phone buzzed. It was a text from one of the loaders, Pete. "Pete, Vane is losing it. He's screaming at everyone to keep working. It's 102 inside now. 3 more guys are in the break room puking. What do we do?" Me, "Stay hydrated, keep your heads down. The cavalry is coming. Don't tell them you talked to me." I felt a cold shiver of satisfaction. Marcus Vane thought he was the hunter. He didn't realize he had just stepped into a digital cage and I was about to turn the key. Information is a weapon, but it's more effective when it comes from a credible source. As a recently fired manager, my testimony could be painted as retaliatory by a skilled corporate lawyer. I needed someone who could verify the financial rot from the inside, someone Marcus Vane had already stepped on. I knew exactly who to call: Sarah Jenkins. Sarah had been the HR assistant at Site 42 for 3 years until she was suddenly let go last November for restructuring. The rumor mill said she'd asked too many questions about Marcus's expense reports. I met her at a quiet, overly air-conditioned coffee shop 3 towns over. She looked tired, but when she saw me, her eyes sharpened.
"Elias," she said, taking a sip of her black coffee. "I saw the news, the kid from the warehouse. Is he okay?"
"He's in stable condition," I said, sitting across from her. "But it should never have happened. Vane refused to fix the chiller because he's draining the M&R budget through a shell company called Vanguard Property Maintenance."
Sarah didn't look surprised. She looked vindicated. "I knew it. I found the invoices last year. When I brought them to Marcus, he told me it was proprietary vendor management and that I didn't have the clearance to audit them. 2 weeks later, my position was eliminated."
"Did you keep anything?" I asked. "Digital copies, paper trails."
Sarah leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Marcus is arrogant. He thinks everyone beneath him is a low-skilled idiot. He didn't realize that as an HR assistant, I had super-user access to the payroll and reimbursement portals to help with the annual audits." She pulled a silver thumb drive from her purse and slid it across the table.
"What's on here?" I asked. Sarah replied, "The black box." I didn't just copy the Vanguard invoices. I copied Marcus's personal reimbursement logs. He's been charging the company for client dinners at high-end steakhouses that happened on the same nights he was at his summer cottage. He's been charging the company for gas for his site visits that were actually trips to his boat slip. But the biggest thing, the wage theft. I felt my jaw tighten. "Wage theft," Sarah said. "He's been manually adjusting the clock-out times for the warehouse staff. If a crew worked 15 minutes of overtime, he'd shave it off to keep the labor efficiency metrics high. Over 3 years, across 200 employees. He's stolen nearly $500,000 in wages to secure his quarterly performance bonuses. This was better than a kickback. This was a class action nightmare. This was the Department of Labor's wet dream. Sarah, if we go public with this, his life is over. Career, assets, likely his freedom, I said.
Good, she said, her voice cold. He ruined my career because I dared to look at a spreadsheet. He's cooking people alive in that warehouse to pay for his mahogany desk. Give me the word, Elias. What do we do?
I've already tipped off the health department and Channel 5, I told her. But the DOL and the IRS, they need the data you have. I'm going to build a comprehensive corruption ecosystem file. We hit him on all three fronts at once. The safety violations for the present, the kickbacks for the past, and the wage theft for the future.
He'll fight back, she warned. Marcus has friends in the corporate office. They'll try to bury this.
Let them try, I said. They can't bury a viral video, and they certainly can't bury an IRS audit. We spent the next 2 hours mapping out the web. Sarah provided the names of 2 other former employees who had been fired for performance issues after questioning Vane's methods. We were building an army of ghosts. As I left the coffee shop, the heat hit me like a physical wall. It was 104 degrees. Back at the warehouse, my guys were still sweating for a man who was stealing their time and their health. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Channel 5 investigates inside the oven at Apex Logistics. Live at 6:00 p.m. At 5:45 p.m., I parked my car in a grocery store lot across the street from the Apex Logistics Site 42. I had a pair of binoculars and a tablet tuned to the Channel 5 live stream. The scene was perfect. A Channel 5 news van was parked right outside the main gate. The reporter, a woman named Casey Vance, known for her tough on corporate segments, was standing in front of the Apex logo.
"We're here at Apex Logistics," Casey began, her voice crisp through my tablet speakers. "Where earlier today, a 20-year-old intern was rushed to the hospital with life-threatening heat stroke. Anonymous sources tell us that the air conditioning in this massive facility has been broken for 6 months, and that management has repeatedly refused to authorize repairs despite record-breaking temperatures."
I saw Marcus Vane emerge from the side door. He was wearing his suit jacket, a mistake. He was already sweating, the dark circles under his arms visible even from this distance. He looked like a man who had just realized his ivory tower was made of wax. He marched toward the reporter, flanked by 2 security guards.
"This is private property," Vane shouted, his voice caught by the news crew's boom mic. "You have no right to be here. The incident this morning was an isolated case of a worker failing to hydrate properly. We have a stellar safety record."
"Mr. Vane," Casey Vance pivoted, shoving the microphone toward him. "We have reports that the internal temperature of the warehouse hit 102 degrees today. We also have a copy of a denied maintenance ticket for the chiller unit dated 4 months ago. Is it true that you told your staff to just buy Gatorade instead of fixing the ventilation?"
Vane's face turned a shade of purple that I'd only seen on ripe plums. "That is a blatant lie. We are in full compliance with all regulations. Now get that camera out of my face." He reached out, another mistake, and tried to swat the camera away. The cameraman didn't flinch. He just caught the moment Vane's hand made contact with the lens.
"Did you just assault my cameraman, Mr. Vane?" Casey asked, her voice calm and predatory. Vane realized his error. He backed away, his chest heaving. "No, we have no further comment. Security, escort these people away."
He retreated back into the building, but the damage was done. He had looked aggressive, sweaty, and guilty on live television. But that was just the appetizer. As Vane disappeared inside, a white SUV with County Health Department on the door pulled up to the gate. 2 inspectors in high-visibility vests stepped out, carrying clipboards and thermal sensors. Because I had filed the report as an imminent danger complaint, they didn't need a warrant to enter. They had the right to perform a spot check of any facility where a life-threatening injury had occurred. I watched through the binoculars as Vane was forced to come back out and open the gate for the inspectors. His body language was that of a man being led to the gallows. "Front 1, social, status, victory," I muttered. "Front 2, professional, status, engaged." Inside that warehouse, the inspectors would find the 102-degree heat. They would find the broken chiller. They would find the danger readings on my psychrometer, which I had accidentally left on my desk for them to find. My phone rang. It was Pete, the loader.
Elias, you see the news. Vane is losing his mind. He's in his office throwing things. He just ordered the IT guy to scrub the maintenance servers and install high-def cameras in the warehouse to find the rats, Pete said.
Let him scrub, I said. The servers are already backed up and the rats are already outside the fence. Pete, tell the guys to be honest with the inspectors. Tell them about the water breaks Vane denied. Tell them about the threats. We're on it, Elias. We're all on it, Pete replied. As the sun began to set, casting long orange shadows over the warehouse, I saw Marcus Vane through the glass of his mezzanine office. He was on the phone, pacing frantically. He thought the cameras would save him. He thought scrubbing a server would hide the kickbacks. He didn't realize that Sarah and I had the black box. He was trying to plug a leak with his finger, unaware that the entire dam was about to burst. Being placed on administrative leave is a double-edged sword for a corporate tyrant like Marcus Vane. He thought he was removing me from the board, isolating me so I couldn't influence the crew. What he didn't realize was that by removing the buffer of my management, he had walked directly into the line of sight of every worker he'd ever stepped on. I sat in my home office, my laptop displaying the graining, blue-tinted feed from the warehouse's internal security system. I'd installed these cameras 3 years ago to prevent pallet theft. Vane had forgotten that the administrator account wasn't tied to my HR profile. It was hard-coded into the local server I'd built myself. On the screen, Vane was pacing the mezzanine like a caged animal. He was accompanied by a man in a tactical vest, a private security consultant hired to find the snitch. They were installing new, high-definition 4K cameras, specifically pointed at the break room and the loading docks. Marcus was hunting. He was looking for a phone, a recording device, or a worker talking too long to a news crew outside the fence. He's looking for a person, I whispered to the monitor. He should be looking for a paper trail. I clicked over to the ERP system. Vane had spent the morning in the Inventory Adjustments module. This was the digital equivalent of burning the ledgers. He was trying to reconcile the missing maintenance funds by marking expensive equipment as scrapped or lost in transit. It was a clumsy move. In the world of logistics, nothing truly disappears. Every scrap has a manifest, every loss has a signature. By deleting the equipment, he was creating a massive, glowing discrepancy that any forensic accountant could see from space. Entry 19 in the log, 09:15 a.m. Marcus Vane observed via remote access attempting to retroactively alter inventory records to cover maintenance fund deficits. Total discrepancy created, $42,500. IP address logged, 192.168.115, Vane's private office terminal. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah Jenkins.
Elias, he's trying to contact me, she said, her voice tight with a mix of fear and adrenaline. He sent a LinkedIn message, then a text from a burner number. He wants to talk about a consulting fee in exchange for some files he thinks I might still have.
He's panicking, I said. He knows the Channel 5 story is picking up steam and the health department inspection yesterday wasn't just a formality. He's trying to buy your silence. What do I do? Sarah asked. Nothing, I said. Don't reply, let him send more messages. Every consulting fee offer is a recorded attempt at witness tampering. Let him bury himself. But Sarah, I need you to do one thing. Check the Vanguard Bank records again. Look for the LLC operating agreement. I need to know who the silent partners are. I went back to the camera feed. Vane was screaming at Pete, my lead hand. Even without audio, the body language was unmistakable. Vane shoved a finger into Pete's chest. Pete didn't move. He stood like a statue, the gray rock method I'd taught them working to perfection. Vane's face was a deep, dangerous red. The heat in the warehouse was still climbing, now 103 degrees according to the sensors. Vane was wearing a lightweight linen suit, but he was still drenched in sweat. His office AC was likely humming at 65 degrees, but he couldn't hide in there forever. The reality of the floor was dragging him down. Then I saw it. The security consultant handed Vane a tablet. Vane looked at it, his eyes widening. He looked directly into one of the older cameras, the one I was currently using. He didn't know I was watching, but he knew the leak was digital. He pulled a radio from his belt and barked an order. 2 minutes later, my remote access cut to black. He'd finally figured out the legacy account. "Too late, Marcus," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I've already downloaded the last 3 years of logs." He had cut my eyes, but I still had his heart, the data, and the heart was failing. Marcus Vane was a man of shortcuts. He didn't believe in fixing systems. He believed in managing perceptions. On Monday morning, 3 days after the news broke and the health department issued its preliminary warning, Vane solved the AC problem. He didn't fix the chiller. That would have cost $8,000 of the money he'd already spent on his summer cottage. Instead, he rented 10 industrial-grade portable cooling units, the kind that looked like giant fans with water reservoirs, and placed them around the warehouse floor. To the news cameras at the gate, it looked like progress. To the workers on the floor, it was a death trap. I got a call from Pete at 11:00 a.m. He sounded terrified.
"Elias, these things are drawing too much power. The lights are flickering and the main breaker box is humming so loud you can hear it over the conveyors. Plus, the humidity is through the roof. It's like a tropical rainforest in here," Pete said.
"He's using swamp coolers in a high-humidity environment," I said, rubbing my temples. "In this region, they don't lower the temperature, they just saturate the air. It makes it harder for the human body to cool itself through sweat. He's making it worse."
"That's not the half of it," Pete whispered. "He's plugged 3 of them into the same circuit as the heavy lift sorter. The cables are hot to the touch, Elias, literally hot."
This was the Newton's third law of Vane's incompetence. His counterattack to the bad press was a dangerous, non-compliant patch designed to save face, not lives. "Pete, listen to me very carefully," I said, my voice dropping into the cold justice register. "Do not touch those units. Do not try to fix them. If a breaker trips, do not reset it. Take a photo of the daisy-chained power strips. Take a photo of the vibrating breaker box. Then I want everyone to move to the safe zones we designated near the emergency exits." "He'll fire us, Elias," Pete said. I replied. "He can't fire all of you, and more importantly, the fire marshal will have his head. I'm calling the county fire inspector now. This isn't a health department issue anymore. This is an imminent fire hazard." I hung up and dialed the county fire marshal's office. I didn't hide behind an anonymous tip this time. I gave my name. I gave my credentials as a senior manager. I explained the electrical load and the unauthorized use of high-draw industrial units on circuits designed for low-amp sorters. "We'll have an inspector there in 30 minutes, the marshal said. While I waited, I looked at the news. Vane was giving an interview at the gate. He looked smug. "As you can see, we've invested heavily in state-of-the-art cooling solutions. The comfort and safety of our team is my #1 priority." 10 minutes later, the feed changed. The camera caught a plume of acrid gray smoke rising from the back of the warehouse. A circuit had blown. Not just blown, it had arced. The cheap, overloaded power strips Vane had used to save on professional installation had melted into the concrete floor, igniting a stack of empty pallets. The warehouse didn't burn down. The sprinkler system I'd meticulously maintained for a decade did its job. But the resulting water damage to $200,000 worth of high-value electronics inventory was catastrophic. The fire marshal didn't just inspect, they shut the building down. I watched the live stream as the fire trucks arrived. Vane was standing by the gate, his jaw hanging open as firemen pushed past him with axes. The state-of-the-art cooling solutions were now charred husks of plastic and copper. Entry 22 in the log, 11:45 a.m. Emergency shutdown of Site 42. Electrical fire caused by non-compliant cooling units. Direct inventory loss estimated at $200,000+. Secondary loss, total operational shutdown by fire marshal. Vane's false victory had turned into a material violation of the highest order. The company's insurance wouldn't cover a fire caused by gross negligence and code violations. The rotten root was finally starting to crumble the foundation. The warehouse was dark. The crew was on emergency paid leave, a directive from the corporate office that Marcus Vane couldn't override. The fire marshal's report had been a scalpel dissecting Vane's cooling solution and finding it wanting in every legal sense. But Marcus was a survivor. He was already spinning the fire as sabotage by a disgruntled former employee. He was trying to pivot, playing the victim of a vindictive manager. He needed to be hit with something he couldn't spin.
I was at Sarah Jenkins's house. Her dining table was covered in bank statements, LLC filings, and a massive, hand-drawn flow chart. Sarah had been a forensic bloodhound. Elias, I found it, she said, her finger tapping a line on a Vanguard property maintenance bank statement. The smoking gun.
I looked at the entry. It was a transfer of $15,000 from the Vanguard account to a dealership called Precision Motors. So he bought a car, I said. We already knew he was using the kickbacks for his lifestyle.
No, Sarah smiled. Look at the date, and look at the memo line on the wire transfer. The date was the same day the AC maintenance ticket was officially closed, as completed in the system, despite the chiller never being touched. And the memo line, it wasn't a VIN number. It was a reference code, MV Lease P1. Marcus Vane is an idiot, Sarah whispered. He didn't buy the car. He used the company's maintenance fund to pay the down payment on a luxury lease for himself, and he used his own initials in the wire memo because he thought he was untouchable.
But wait, I said, my heart starting to hammer. Look at the From account on the wire. That's not a Vanguard account. I looked closer. The account number matched the Apex Logistics regional payroll account.
He didn't just funnel maintenance money, Sarah said, her voice trembling with excitement. He was so confident that no one was watching the payroll flow that he directly transferred a retention bonus, which he'd written for himself using a dead employee's ID, straight to the car dealership.
I felt a wave of cold clarity. This was the trident coming together. 1, the professional front, the fire and safety violations. 2, the social front, the news and the intern's collapse. 3, the financial front, the systematic theft from the company and the government. Sarah, I said, we don't go to corporate with this. They'll try to settle it quietly to avoid the stock hit. We go to the FBI and the Department of Labor. This is a multi-state federal crime. I spent the next 6 hours refining the final evidence package. It was a work of art. I cross-referenced the payroll logs Sarah had saved with the Bill Henderson bank transfers and the Vanguard invoices. I also added the piece de resistance, the audio of Vane attempting to bribe Sarah. It's ready, I said, closing my laptop. What now? Sarah asked. Now we wait for the heat, I said. The forecast says tomorrow is going to be 106 degrees again. The fire marshal is allowing a limited entry for Vane to assess inventory damage. He'll be in the building, alone, thinking he has a chance to fix the books. You're going there? Sarah asked. No, I said. The enforcers are going there. I'm just going to watch from the street. I called the lead investigator at the Department of Labor and the local FBI field office. I didn't ask for an inquiry. I told them I had a live embezzlement in progress and a hazardous workplace with criminal negligence. The nuclear option was authorized. The heat wave reached its crescendo on Thursday. The air was a shimmering, distorted curtain of gold. Site 42 sat in the middle of the industrial park like a dead whale, dark and silent, except for the single, humming generator running Marcus Vane's office. I parked my car 2 blocks away. I wasn't alone. 3 black SUVs were parked in the shadows of the neighboring warehouse. 2 marked cruisers from the county sheriff's office sat idling nearby. In my passenger seat was Detective Miller, the health department inspector who had become the lead liaison for the Joint Task Force. You're sure he's in there? Miller asked, checking his watch. He's in there, I said. He's trying to use the limited access window to manually delete the legacy payroll files from the local server. He thinks if he can wipe the physical hard drives before the subpoena hits, he can claim data loss from the fire. And you have the backup? Miller asked. I have the backup, the mirror, and the metadata, I said. He's deleting ghosts. At 10:15 a.m., the signal came. The SUVs and cruisers didn't use their sirens. They rolled up to the gate with the quiet, terrifying efficiency of a professional hit. I got out of the car and walked to the fence line. I wanted to see this. Not for revenge, but for the closure of the equation. The authorities didn't wait for Vane to come out. They used a bolt cutter on the chain-link gate, the same gate Vane had used to keep the news crew out. They breached the side door with a battering ram. 5 minutes of silence followed. Then the shouting started. Marcus Vane was led out of the side door in handcuffs. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket today. He was in a sweat-stained dress shirt, his hair disheveled, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated shock.
"You can't do this," Vane screamed, his voice cracking. "I am the regional director. I have a right to counsel. This is a workplace dispute."
"Mr. Vane," an FBI agent said, his voice carrying clearly across the quiet yard. "You are being charged with wire fraud, identity theft, and criminal negligence resulting in bodily harm. We have a search warrant for your home, your office, and the bank accounts of Vanguard Property Maintenance, LLC. Vane's knees buckled. He looked toward the street, his eyes scanning the distance until they locked onto mine. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I stood perfectly still, the ultimate gray rock.
"You," Vane shrieked, lunging toward the fence. "Thorne, you did this. You're a traitor. I'll sue you for everything you have. I'll tell them you were the one who authorized the Vanguard contracts."
"Actually, Marcus," I said, my voice projected with calm authority, "the Vanguard contracts were signed with your personal digital certificate, which we've already verified. And as for Bill Henderson, he's currently on the phone with the Department of Labor from his home in Tampa. He's very confused as to why you've been paying him for 2 years." Vane stopped struggling. The color drained from his face, replaced by a gray, sickly pallor. He realized finally that the system he thought he owned had turned into a guillotine. As they loaded him into the back of the SUV, the Channel 5 news van pulled up. Casey Vance was already on the sidewalk, the camera rolling as the regional director was hauled away like a common thief. Entry 25 in the log, 10:45 a.m. Subject A arrested by FBI and county sheriff. Evidence package handed over to federal prosecutors. Equation solved. The warehouse was sealed with yellow crime scene tape. It was the first time in 12 years the building had been truly quiet. The heat was still there, but the rotten root had been pulled. "It's over, Elias," Detective Miller said, walking over to me. "The DOL is estimating the wage theft at nearly $600,000. Between the embezzlement and the safety violations, he's looking at 15 to 20 years. "Good," I said. "Now let's go see about Leo." Leo, the intern, had been released from the hospital that morning. He had a long road of recovery ahead, but he was alive. And thanks to the wage theft discovery, he and every other worker in that building was about to receive a check for back pay that would change their lives. 6 months later, the heat of the summer had long since faded, replaced by the sharp, clinical chill of a November morning. I stood in the back of a federal courtroom, my hands in my pockets, watching the final act of the Vane equation. Marcus Vane sat at the defense table. He looked 20 years older. His expensive suits had been replaced by a cheap, off-the-rack navy blazer that hung loose on his frame. He had lost his summer cottage, his luxury car, and his reputation. His wife had filed for divorce 3 days after the FBI raid, citing irreconcilable differences and financial fraud. It turned out Marcus had been investing her family's trust fund into Vanguard too. He was truly alone.
The judge leaned forward, her eyes cold as she looked over her spectacles at the defendant. "Mr. Vane, your conduct was not merely a lapse in judgment. It was a systemic, calculated campaign of greed that endangered dozens of lives and robbed hundreds of families of their hard-earned wages. You used your position of power to treat human beings as inventory and the law as a suggestion. I was trying to hit my targets, Your Honor," Vane whispered, his voice stripped of its former arrogance. The corporate pressure did not force you to steal the identity of a retired loader, the judge snapped. The corporate pressure did not force you to ignore a medical emergency while an intern was dying on your floor. You are a predator, Mr. Vane.
The sentence, 18 years in federal prison. No parole. $1.2 million in restitution to be paid to the employees of Site 42. As Vane was led away in shackles, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Sarah Jenkins. She looked radiant.
She had been hired as the head of HR for a competing logistics firm, a firm that valued ethics and compliance. "We did it, Elias," she said. "The checks went out yesterday. Pete and the guys, they're calling it the Vane bonus." Most of them got enough in back pay to clear their debts or put a down payment on a house. "And the warehouse?" I asked. "Apex sold the site," Sarah said. "The new owners have already installed a redundant, state-of-the-art HVAC system and a worker-led safety committee."
They offered me my old job back, but I told them I'd rather stay where I am. "What about you?" Sarah asked. I smiled. "I'm enjoying the silence, Sarah." I had received a whistleblower reward from the IRS, a percentage of the recovered tax revenue from the Vanguard shell company. It was enough to retire comfortably at 45. But I wasn't retiring. I had started a consulting firm, Cold Justice Logistics. I didn't move pallets anymore. I audited corporations. I looked for rotten roots and provided the systemic tools for employees to protect themselves. I walked out of the courthouse into the crisp, cold air. Across the street, a large billboard for a luxury car dealership caught my eye. It was the same dealership where Marcus had leased his car using the company's money. The billboard was being taken down. I got into my car, a modest, reliable sedan, and checked my phone. I had a new message from Leo, the intern. "Mr. Thorne, I just got my back pay check. I'm back in school and I'm majoring in labor law. Thank you for not letting us boil." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The data was clear. The variables had balanced. Victory wasn't a feeling. Victory was a set of closed files and a cool room. Lesson: the cold justice method. Strategic warfare in the corporate and legal domain. The saga of Elias Thorne versus Marcus Vane is not a story of luck. It is a masterclass in systemic warfare. Below are the core methods and lessons derived from this conflict. 1. The Gray Rock Protocol. The method. When the antagonist attempts to incite an emotional response, the protagonist becomes a gray rock, boring, unresponsive, and purely factual. The value: by removing emotion, you force the antagonist to become the dynamic element. Arrogant individuals thrive on control. When they cannot control your emotions, they overreach. Every emotional outburst from the antagonist becomes a data point for your evidence log. Lesson: in a legal or corporate battle, the first person to scream is the first person to lose. 2. The Trident Expansion Engine. The method: never attack on a single front. Elias Thorne engaged the social, professional, and financial sectors simultaneously. The value: a corrupt entity can often bury a single complaint or bribe a single inspector. They cannot, however, fight the FBI, the local news, and OSHA at the exact same time. This creates a systemic choke, where the antagonist's resources are spread too thin. Lesson: information is a force multiplier, distributed across different authorities to prevent a cover-up. 3. The Clean Hands Doctrine. The method: Elias never broke the law to trap Vane. He used legacy access he already possessed, recorded conversations in accordance with state law, and allowed the authorities to perform the actual breach. The value: if you break the law to get someone, you lose your legal standing. By remaining a static observer, Elias ensured that the focus remained entirely on Vane's crimes. Lesson: the system is the weapon, you are merely the operator. 4. Identifying the rotten root. The method: Elias didn't just complain about the heat, he asked why the money was missing. This led to the discovery of the shell company and identity theft. The value: in the Western corporate world, negligence is rarely just laziness. It is usually a symptom of financial malfeasance. Finding the money trail transforms a HR dispute into a federal felony. Lesson: follow the money. Negligence is the smoke, fraud is the fire. 5. Malicious Compliance and Newton's Third Law. The method: when Vane ordered the staff to keep working, Elias complied by documenting the exact conditions and letting the inevitable consequences trigger the authorities. The value: by literally following a flawed order, you shift 100% of the liability to the person who gave it. Lesson: if an antagonist insists on a disastrous course of action, your job is not to stop them. It is to ensure the paper trail proves it was their idea.